Well, hello and good morning. This is Stephen Jenkins. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. It's on Church360 Ledger. It's a basic introduction to our church management software. Once again, I'm Stephen Jenkins, and this is my contact information here. I am a software consultant at Concordia Technology Solutions, and I've been with the company almost 5 years now. So very happy to be a part of this webinar and show you this exciting and great software. I am blessed to be joined today by James Bowman. He is a data integration analyst here at Concordia Publishing House, and he's going to actually lead the webinar. This is his contact information on the screen. Before we jump in, I want to get into a little housekeeping. We will have 50 minutes for this presentation, and afterwards 10 minutes for questions. Now, don't wait until the end for the questions. Throughout this webinar, if you have any questions that come up, please use the chat box and type them in. That way we'll address them and not go over our time here. If you have to break away for a second, don't be worried. We are recording this webinar and we will send everyone a link that takes you into the recording. So feel free to review it and share it with others who may be looking into this software. Now, with Concordia Technology Solutions, we are the church administration division of Concordia Publishing House. And we've actually been developing software for churches since 1984. Now, today's webinar, again, is on Church360 Ledger, but Ledger is actually a part of our Church360 suite comprised of 3 products. So Ledger is our financial piece, but we do have Church360 Members, which is your church management software where you can list your prospects and your members, their contact information. You can also create church directories and your calendar of events, take attendance for those events and enter in offerings. And those offering batches sync into Ledger, which we'll be covering today. And our final piece in the suite is Church360 Unite, which is a church website. More on Church360 Ledger. Once again, it's our financial piece of the Church360 suite, and we designed this software to be intuitive and extremely secure. We use SSL encryption for all of our products in the Church360 product suite, and so it's very difficult to be hacked by anyone, so it's very secure. We also want to make software that's focused on the individuals, their church, who are going to use it and make it very easy to use. Now, for the webinar today, we have come up with some assumptions. We are first assuming that you're somewhat familiar with church finances. May not be an expert, but we're assuming that you have some type of experience with it. We are also assuming that you are new to Church360 Ledger, whether you're looking at a trial or you're just looking into changing some options. And we also assume that you are extremely busy, and for that, we again thank you so much for your time this morning. But I don't want to just lead on those assumptions. I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about yourself. So I have a couple of questions that I'm going to launch, and you'll have the opportunity to tell us more about yourself. So the first question is, please select the option that closely describes your primary role at your church. So if you could take the time to answer these questions. We have some admins, excellent. Oh, financial managers, excellent. A couple more seconds here. Okay, we have a good mix. So I'll close out this question and we'll go to the next one. And that question is, are you currently using Church360 Ledger in your congregation? So please answer yes, no, or no, but planning to subscribe soon. Excellent. We have a good balance of non-users and users. Thank you for that. And so curious, with those who are using the software, what would you consider your Church360 Ledger skill level to be? So please choose expert, advanced, intermediate, or novice, or a newbie, please. Have some newbies, excellent. A couple more seconds here. All right, newbies and intermediate, good mix. Thank you so much for answering those questions. So for today's outline, we will go over the goals of Church360 Ledger and take a tour of the software. Once again, that will be led by James. And then we'll wrap up with questions and answers. Now, church finances are often managed by volunteers, and so with Church360 Ledger, we recognize that these volunteers may not be accountants, and so accountability is very important in the church, and we want to make sure there's no mistakes or ill intentions done with using this financial software. So we want to prevent the well-intentioned individuals from making mistakes. We're all human here. We also want to hold those accountable as well. Now, Church360 Ledger was designed to prevent mistakes as well. Now, to go over the basic introduction, I'm going to turn things over to James, and he's going to take it from here. So let me switch over.
Thank you, Stephen. All right. Go ahead and grab my screen up here. And let me turn on my camera as well there so you can all see me. Hello, everyone. My name is James, and as Stephen says, I am a data integration analyst here who will be walking you through Church360 Ledger today. And I saw that most of our participants today were newbies, so this course is perfect for your level. And for the 20% of you who were intermediate, hopefully there's a few nuggets you could pull out of there. Please ask questions as we go or at the end for both camps there, and we'll go ahead and get those answered. And let's go ahead and jump into our presentation today. We'll go ahead and pull up our screen. Let me see. Can everyone see my screen here? Perfect. Okay. So my screen here should show the sign-in information. And let's go ahead and sign in. And the first screen you see after going into Ledger will be your home screen. And it says home right here because if you were to search home into this little omni bar, it will just take you right back to the screen. If I backspace that out though, it will show you some of the most common searches that you can put in there. For example, you can go directly to your assets page, or you could go directly to your checking page right from this omni bar. So it's a great way to quickly jump between pages. It's the first thing I want to highlight today on this home page. I'll go over a couple of the other things on this page because as you can see right now, it might look a little bit overwhelming, like there's a lot of information on there. And it's just a lot of information that we're providing for you in this dashboard. But once I explain it, where everything's coming from and what all the icons mean, hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense there. So we'll start up here in the upper left-hand corner. And the first thing you have is also another home button here. So if you were to click on this, it will take you right back to the home page. You can see home is right back in there as well. So that's always your anchor back to the home page is this little $sign. Then just to the right of that, we have a list of the different books that you have in your ledger. Now a book is like a different company or a different organization. So you would have your church books, your school books, daycare, and then you might have a different, a sister church that you're also, that maybe would be in there as well. So those are what your books would be. We can jump between those should we need to, but I'll just be sticking mainly with the Christ Community Church for now. Excellent, so that's there. And now the next icon over on the right is your print queue. So whenever you send a check or something else to be printed, it will show the little icon up here with the number of checks. And then you can go ahead and click on that to see your print queue, and you can actually print them from here as such. And it'll just bring you right up into your printing screen, and you can see the checks right there. We'll go into checks a little bit more in a minute, but I just want you to know where the print queue is once you've created your check to be printed, where that would go. All right, so we can come right back to our home screen, just clicking on that. Next thing we'll go through is we'll go through our pending transactions, and this is very straightforward. These are transactions that are imported from somewhere else. So it could be a transaction sent over from Church360 members or from another service that we integrate with. And if you have more questions on that, you can definitely ask those as well. But this is where those would live once they come over. Then we'll come over here to our book of reports. This will show you all the possible reports that we have currently. And we'll go over these in greater detail in a second, but just to let you know where those reports live inside the software. We have the general ledger, income and expense, chart of accounts, and balance sheet as our main 4 reports. And then of course our event log, which just basically tracks all the different steps and changes that were taken inside the software for auditing purposes or just for double checking. The next icon over here, this mechanical cog, is the settings menu, and it's divided into two sections. The top section above this line right here are things that are specific to your current set of books. So these 5 things, while the icons will stay the same, the information contained in them will be different depending on which book you chose over here. Now, everything below the line will be the same regardless of which book you have. General settings, which users have access, the roles of those users, etc., will all stay the same regardless of the book. Excuse me. Then, the last icon we have over here in the top row has your picture in there. And the picture itself is pulled in from a website called, I'm going to lose it now. Anyway, we'll come back to that if I remember it. There is a website you can go out and put your picture on, and it will follow you along on many different sites that integrate with that. So that's just where I put my picture. It pulls that over there. You don't really have to worry about that if you don't need a picture in there. It also has your user settings, which we'll click on those really quickly. It allows you to see which email you're currently using to log in, your current password, and then of course changing your passwords there as well. So that's pretty straightforward, I hope. And then of course, if you were to log out, you could always just click that button and then right back in. Simple as that. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is the new transaction tab. And please go ahead and ask any questions you have. If I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down, or if I didn't say something clearly, just let me know that I need to repeat something there. I sometimes get kind of animated when I'm on these talks, so I apologize for that. All right, so let's go ahead and look at these new transactions here. And the first thing I should mention when going into these new transactions is they all are drawing from a different account type. And we'll go ahead and look at those different account types really quickly here by jumping over to our settings and chart of accounts. Give it a second to load there. Perfect. So this is a set of accounts here. It is organized with assets, which is the first account type you can make a transaction from. Then we have liabilities, income, and expense. Those are the 4 different accounts that we allow you to enter in to Ledger. Now, some of you at the intermediate level, or even some of you newbies, might know that there is something called equity inside the software. Equity is something that is done behind the scenes for you in there. And that's really the best way to describe it, because this software was designed for volunteers, for people who weren't full-time accountants, and could really just be as simple as possible, where we take all of that, the guesswork out of it for you. So equity is something that is calculated, and if you want to know more about how you can track that inside Ledger, you can definitely contact us. Just know that it's not something that you can actually manipulate yourself directly, but it's calculated for you there. So these are the 4 different accounts that you can run transactions off of. And for asset accounts, the first thing you may notice is that there's some indentation here. And there's also, there's buttons over here and over here. And what does that all mean? Well, what this means is that these top 2 here have this kind of teal line on the left side of them. That means that they are categories here. That is something that accounts roll up into. For example, you have your central trust, you have checkings and savings as subcategories underneath that. And everything that is indented underneath those categories rolls up into them. For example, under checking, we have the central trust checking account. And then underneath that, we also have the unrestricted checking and all the different funds beneath. All these different totals roll up here into the central trust checking account, which then rolls up into checking, which then rolls up into central trust as well. But not just checking rolls up into central trust, savings does. So for example, we could move savings by clicking on these 8 dots here, move that right under here if we wanted to. And then all of these numbers would be added into this top number up here, because we're saying this is a subcategory of the upper category. So this makes it very easy to set up your structure for your chart of accounts. It's all click and drag. What you can do is just click on savings, move that right down here, and we want that to be indented 1 step. So it took it out of checking, but left it in central trust checking. And let's say we wanted to move this, we could just pop that right up there and do an indent. And it would be rolled up right into there as well, and it's removed from savings. So it's very easy to move around and manipulate your actual structure once you've created it. Now let's go ahead and pull that back down here. Let's go ahead and talk about creating a new account inside of liabilities here. So open those up, and I'm going to actually go ahead and add a new category first, because I'm going to create credit cards and track those under liabilities. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new category, and once I click on that, it brings up this box, and in names, I'm going to choose cards here, which you can obviously tell I've done this before because it pre-populated that. These will be all of my credit cards, and then I don't want this to roll up into any other category, so I'll leave it separate. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a new account, and I'll click on new account here, and we'll say this one is Visa. You do not need an account number, is optional in case you do decide to use that, but initial balance is always required, whether it's 0 or whether it's 100,000, whatever that balance is required there. So we'll just choose 150. This is what we owe on that Visa card. Go ahead and submit that here. Perfect. Now all I have to do is just click and drag, and it shows us the indent there. Perfect. So now we show that this Visa card is under this credit card here. And oh, one thing I should have mentioned, I'm so sorry I forgot this sooner. You may be wondering why I said this is money you owe on the Visa card. It's because I skipped a step in my presentation, so I do apologize. These 4 accounts all show different things about your money. For example, liabilities here, they show money that you owe. So this is real money that you owe. It's an obligation on your assets. Assets are real money that you have in a bank account somewhere. Now, excuse me. Obviously, it might not be a wad of cash, but it's money you have in your account, real assets. Income is money that is coming into the church for specific uses. So this would be like your offerings or other income there. Expenses is a way to track the money that you've paid out from your bank account there. So I glossed right over that. I'm so sorry, but those are the 4 basic accounts and what they do inside of finance, but specifically inside of Ledger there. So when I'm talking about liabilities, I'm assuming that this is money that I owe someone else. So I swipe my credit card. The money is paid to the grocer or whoever I'm buying something from, but I still have to pay that back at a later date. So jumping back in here to liabilities, we'll jump over to we'll add a second card in there. So we have our Visa card. We owe $150 on that. Now we'll add a new account, and we'll say this one is MasterCard. Simple words, they're the ones that get you. And initial balance, we'll say that one's $500 there. And we'll go ahead and submit that here. And you may notice now that it's off by itself. It doesn't roll up into anything currently. But as soon as we pop it over here and indent it, it rolls up into our cards there. It adds those 2 together. So that's the basic structure of how you're going to build your chart of accounts. And it's true whether you're building an income account, whether you're building an expense account, or whether you're building asset accounts. The same basic structure is true. Let's build one asset account really quickly here. So let's go ahead and add a new account. We'll just have this be under our LCEF fund. And we'll say this is just a test account, is what I'll name this here. No account number is necessary for this. And we'll go ahead and say, yes, you can write checks from this account here. All right, so now we've set that. We'll go ahead and put in our initial balance. I'm just going to do $250 there and submit. Perfect. But I have to just click and drag right here. This is not a category. So you can't click and drag under other accounts. So we'll say, okay, that's fine. We'll bring this up here and we'll bring this under miscellaneous then. No big deal. So that's one thing you will have to watch out for is if you want something to roll up into something else, then you have to first create a category so that the accounts can roll up into it first. So it's pretty straightforward like that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a subcategory into our accounts or restricted funds. So what that means is that of the funds that are in this account currently or in this designation currently, we're going to say some of them are held for specific use, but some of them are held for general uses. So let's click this Add New Restricted Fund button, and let's name this, we'll just name it Petty Cash. And we'll submit that there. Perfect. So now we have our original balance in the unrestricted funds we can spend on anything, but we've said that a certain amount of money might go to a very specific restricted purpose there. And we'll go ahead and put that in, and you can see all the details there. This number will go up as you deposit money in there. We'll show deposits in a second on that. All right. Now, is there anything that you would like to specifically see on the chart of accounts? Maybe something I didn't go over as well as I should have? Please let me know now so I can answer those questions, because I know I did kind of jump around in my presentation there, so I apologize for that. All right. Well, keep those questions coming if you're typing them, but I am going to move on, and we'll show you transactions here. So the first transaction I will show is I'm going to go ahead and show a deposit into that restricted account there. And the first thing you might notice when this jumps up is it looks kind of like a check. Not exactly, but similar. We kind of modeled it that way. So we knew a lot of our audience would recognize a check and how that basic layout is structured. So we want to keep that as close as possible for this. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing any transaction is that the software is going to do debits and credits for you. In the case of deposit, it does those automatically for you. But that basically shows how money is moving inside the software. And if you aren't familiar with different accounts and how they're debited or how they're credited, you should really look into that. And I can actually send you a link, or our support team can walk you through that as well, to a helpful guide that I actually wrote on debits and credits. To help you understand how they move money. Certain accounts, a debit increases it, another account type, debits decrease that. But for deposits here, that's all done by the software for us. Again, we want to make that as easy as possible, and debits and credits is something that I'm told even seasoned accountants can have trouble with here. All right, so let's jump into this deposit. Let's go ahead and add our memo here. Something simple. Again, the memo and the payee are completely optional. And first thing we have to do is decide which asset account we want to put this money into. So we'll jump into our asset account here. Let me find that one. I can search for it here. Petty cash. Perfect. We'll put that in. And let's say what amount we want to put this in. Let's say $100. Great. Okay. And you can see over here under income, it also put the same amount under income accounts. And so now we can come over here to income, like which income account do I want to put this in? Let's say this is going to go under the income account we have set up for missions. So all the money that comes into our business or church or whatever we have associated there or missions wants to be funneled through this one missions fund here. Go ahead and click on that. And it automatically put in the debits and credits, showing us that we want to increase the mission funds. We credit that. We also want to increase the petty cash, so we've debited that. I was checking to make sure it did that right. It did it right both times. You may notice that there are these blank spaces here. What that means is that you have to have an equal amount on the debit side as you have on the credit side. So we had to credit the mission fund. So that means we had to apply a debit over here of the equal amount so that it balances out. It won't allow you to lock it or save your transaction if you don't have it balanced there. For instance, I could go ahead and say youth fund, I want to do $50. And well, now it's out of balance here. So if I try to save it there, it'll say it should equal $150 in that regard. All right, so let's delete that there. It's simple enough to remove. And now we can go ahead and save our deposit. Excellent. Transaction was created. And now let's go ahead and see if I put it into the correct account here. Looks like, oh, I might have put it to this account. I think I put it in the wrong account. Well, anyway, I put it in the wrong petty cash account because there were two of those, but it did deposit it in there as this balance was 225 and now is 125 there. Okay, let's check out that income account here. Go to income. Let's look at mission fund. Perfect. Okay, let me go in and actually check that here in the general ledger. Ooh, let's confirm those. Before I move on, let me show you that something I often forget. So don't feel bad if you forget it either. But now we've added new accounts, we have to save those changes or reset what we've done before we move on. So let's go ahead and save those changes, and we will confirm those. Great. And now let's move on to the general ledger and see, yep, there we have our deposit. Went into petty cash for $100 and went into the mission fund for $20. Now you may remember that I told you this was where the reports live, but it's also where the general ledger actually lives. You can track different things in, and they are basically one and the same. The reason being is you can see the general ledger. In a minute, I'll tell you how to filter that down, how to group things down, but then you can export it to Excel or you can print it as well. So this is kind of how you see your entire general ledger. You put just the information you want on it, and then you export it out of the software by one of these two methods. And you might notice that I think most screens have these on. Certainly all the report screens have this on there, these two options. So we saw our deposit. Great, okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing that I had here. If there's no questions, let me just check that really quickly here. There's no questions, okay. Great. So we'll move on to budgets. And in order to do budgets, we'll move on to the second option down here under the cog. Underneath chart of accounts, we have our budgets. And this screen has a ton of information on it. It may look kind of overwhelming at first, but what this is showing is it's breaking down all of your income and all of your expense accounts into the total and then the monthly totals. Now you may notice that it does not include anything for assets or for liabilities, and that is because those are static sums that you have right now, and you don't usually budget those, at least we don't inside Ledger. But for money that you expect to receive or expect to spend, as in income or expense, then we budget those there. So the way this graph works, and again, you can export this to Excel if that makes more sense for you to go ahead and present that to your board. The way this works is you can enter a total in one time here. Aha, perfect, this reminds me. These are calculated for you, the ones in dark gray. So they are the sum of these different parts beneath them. So you can't actually edit the gray ones. The white ones here, or the light gray, depending on how well my eyes work here, are the ones you can actually edit. Now, if you change this total here, let's say 300,000, it's going to automatically distribute that for each month, so basically divide it by 12 and give equal allotment to each month. We'll also change all the dark gray boxes above it. Just tab off of that. Let's say the general fund, that seems pretty good for the year, but you know April might be a little bit higher. Let's say 30,000. We've got Easter in there, so that might be a little bit higher. So you can go in and change them individually if you would like to, and have your baseline that you set at first here. And then you could just go in and do all of these individually if you wanted to. Really, you could do 100 this month and 150 this month, just tabbing as you go across the interface there to put your budgets in. Excuse me. So that's, pardon me, a little bit of congestion lingering here. So that, in a nutshell, is budgets. They're fairly straightforward. The hardest thing about them is how many of them there are. There's quite a few budgets. There's just one for every expense or income account you have. Just one second here. All right, sorry about that. So we do avoid that in this broadcast. All right, so now that we've done that, we can come down to the lower right-hand corner and we can save our budgets. And again, please ask any questions you might have about budgeting. Hopefully it was pretty straightforward for you there. Unfortunately, at this time, you can export it to Excel. We don't allow imports from Excel, so you'll have to make all your changes in here, but I think this is so much easier than Excel myself to make all those changes. I would never want to import something from Excel into here. All right, let's go ahead and save those changes. Great. So now we got our budgeting done. Let me show you another transaction in here. Let's go back and show you a journal entry. Now I'm going to show you this one because it's a little bit more involved because the debits and credits aren't done for you automatically. So in journal entries, I went a little bit too fast. Come up here and you go to new transaction. Last option is a journal entry. And some of you who are more savvy with accounting might realize that basically all these other ones are journal entries as well. We've just realized that these follow very specific rules, the checks, payments, deposits, transfers, and we were able to build more structure onto those specific tasks than just a basic journal entry, which is moving funds inside of, but between accounts basically. So a deposit adds money into your books. Journal entry is basically moving things from different accounts in your books in a very condensed layman's terms for that there. So we'll jump into our journal entry here. And again, you see the basic layout's the same. We have our memo, payee or optional. The first thing we want to do is we want to give it the first account. And when we start, we can choose any account we have, literally any of them. We can, of course, search to see those there. Oh, now it shows up, the correct one here. But the second account, we have fewer options because, well, not quite yet. Let me put in a debit first. Let me say $100 in a debit. So we want to go ahead and increase this, meaning we have to take the money or we have to credit something else. So now we have fewer options that we can put in for the money that's going to be coming into this. So let's see, what do we want to decrease here? Let's go ahead and let's decrease moving the money into our petty cash. Let's see. Let's pull up the postage expense. We put too much money in our postage expense. It should have gone into our petty cash. We're going to move that money out. So we put $100 that we want to move into petty cash. We want to increase it with a debit. So we're going to go ahead and credit the expense account there that we accidentally said we spent too much money there. Put $100 in. Great, and now everything is green here. So we can go ahead and save the transaction. And this is the part where I usually get the most questions is about debits and credits, just because a debit increases an asset account and a credit decreases an expense account, like postage expense here. For a liability account, it's the exact opposite. A credit would increase a liability and a debit would decrease a liability there. So that's something that if you need more information, go ahead and ask a question. I'll get you a link to that help page we have, or you can definitely call our support team and they can walk you through that too. It's a question we got a lot up there. All right, so we'll save our journal entry here. And then, perfect, that was saved. Let's go in and look at our general ledger. Excellent, so it shows our journal entry right up there. And we can actually just click on this here and it will take us all the way to the petty cash account and show us exactly what history has happened on that account. That's a great way to kind of drill down from the general ledger into these hyperlinked, well, they kind of hyperlinked, if they're active links here. You can see, okay, we want to look at the entire, we're not too sure about this correction. Let's look at the general fund here. You can click on that and jump directly into the general fund and see all the history starting at the date we clicked on. So that's pretty nifty there. If we want to see a different date range, we can of course click on this date up here in the upper right hand corner and choose, let's say we want to see just Q1, and it'll go ahead and filter that down. Well, let's say we just want to see February in Q1, what deposits were made, what checks were written, and so on and so forth. All right, now the next transaction I'm going to show you is going to be a check. And the reason I show you these is because it has the capability of being printed. And this one hopefully looks a lot more like a check, because that's what we're going for there. So you have your memo line, we can just put test again. It shows you exactly what it's going to look like when it prints out. You must choose a payee, someone who's going to be receiving this check. Let's say this is for our trash recycling. Puts that all in right there. You pre-populate that ahead of time. It pulls that all in for you. Then you say, okay, I want to go ahead and take this out of, well, I'm just going to pick one here. I'm just going to choose unrestricted checking. And we're going to say the amount of $50. All right, good. Now it's saying that we have to choose an expense or liability for this to come out of for the debits and credits to work. And that makes sense. If you're spending money, you probably want to check it as an expense, but it could be categorized as a liability. You never know. Let me quickly here. Oh, sorry, just got a question here. Let me see. The question is, I'm reviewing our budgets and I've noticed that this is blank. Is it something I need to set up, or does everything I enter into my accounts automatically go into the budget? That's a wonderful question. It's my understanding that it does not automatically flow into the budgets. If you want information to, yes, I believe that's correct. I'll double check that here really quick. But I believe it does not automatically flow in there. Let me actually check that out really quickly here. It's a good question. All right, so let me jump in over into one of these funds here. Okay, I don't think, let me create a new account here. On my chart of accounts. It has to be income or expense. A new account in here. Name this test. Initial balance, $10,000. And we'll submit that here. All right, save changes. Great. Now if we jump over to our budgets, it did not bring it over. No. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't automatically bring it over. This is what it should look like with zeros there. And you could go ahead and apply whatever budget you would like by just typing in the amount right here. Let's say, okay, we have 10,000 in there right now. We expect to get 15,000 a year into that. And this is the rate you could budget per month. But let's say, oh, this is going to be a little bit higher here, 1,500. You could definitely add that in. So absolutely not. You don't have to add any budget in that you don't want to. You can only budget the accounts that you really need there. And then you can actually filter this down. So you can see actually last year's budget, which is 0 for this one, or last year's actuals. Also, I should have mentioned those as well, but it should come up as blank the first time you see it there for a new account. Yep, that's a good question there. All right, let's jump back into our check. And we'll go ahead and put in the payee, asset or liability. Ooh, I'm on the wrong book. See how easy that was to do? So just come right back up here to the upper left-hand corner, and we're going to select the correct set of books we've got here. Great. That's why it wasn't there. Okay. So now let's come in here and look at, oh, that's under transactions, checks. Great. So now we'll do trash, unrestricted, amount of $50. Choose our expense account here. Let's choose, not sure if we have a good one here. Let me see, trash removal. Great, we'll choose that one. So that's another different expense account we set up. I believe that's an expense account. Yeah, that's an expense account we set up there. And if this side matches this side, then we know we're in good shape. And we can go ahead and proceed with this check. Let's go ahead and enter that memo again, just to show you what that would look like here. And then you could add in a check number if you wanted to. It's completely optional. Some checks you may have purchased come with check numbers there already on them. So you just go ahead and enter that in if you wanted to. It's up to you. There for that. And let's see. I think everything else is good here. Perfect. Now the last thing I want to show before I save this is I'm going to show you how to make this reoccurring, because trash is something that every church obviously has to deal with. Everyone really has to deal with it. And so if you want to have Ledger produce the same check every single time, whether that's monthly or weekly, whatever you want that to be, you can definitely make this reoccurring. This will not automatically print the check for you. What it does is it will generate the check and notify you that it's ready to be printed. And you have to take the final step to put it into your books. So you still have control over when it actually goes into your books, but all this hard work is done once, and then the software does the rest of it for you. Make this reoccurring. And that's a fine name. It recurs every single month on the 7th day. Sure, why not? Or you could choose the first Wednesday, or whatever you want that to come out there, and then we'll save that here. And the reoccurring transaction was created, and then in the future it will jump over here to your print queue for you to go ahead and set that up whenever you're ready to go ahead and do it. You'll see a little notification bubble up there to do that. All right, so that's checks. Let me just check the questions to see. Oh, I'm so sorry, my voice is going in and out. Can everyone still hear me well? Testing, testing. Thank you, Georgette, for that. All right. Gotcha. I do see a question that Bailey had. Thank you for your question here about checks. Your printed paper checks might work with the template. We designed our ledger template to work with the checks provided by I believe it's Forms Plus. Yes, Forms Plus. They have them right on their website. They're listed right for Church360 on there. So if you want to buy your checks, you can certainly buy them from that website. What I would recommend doing if you don't go with those checks, well, actually, even if you do go with their services for buying checks from them, just the first time you do this, run it through as a blank piece of paper, and then just to see if it printed off correctly. And you can kind of see, okay, this is where it's going to line up, and probably get a pretty good picture of whether or not it's going to fit on your check before you use a check there as well. But some checks are, well, actually all checks are different, and some of them might not work with it. But if you buy them from Forms Plus, they definitely will work with Ledger. It's a great question there. All right, I'll go ahead and move on to my next transaction type, which is a payment here. And we'll just click on this. Again, you see the same basic layout. We've got our memo we can add in, telling us what this is for. Our payee, which is optional on a payment, unlike a check. And then we have, again, our asset or liability. Where's the money coming from? Whether it's from money we have that we're paying out, or money that we will pay out at a later date in the form of a liability. And then the expense or liability. You're just checking my time. Okay, so for this payment, let's say it's $25 going out here. And let's say this is for gas. Paying this for gas. Someone was nice enough to, on the last youth retreat, drive the youth in their car. We're going to reimburse them for gas there. All right, let's go ahead and save this payment. Let's put down youth as the memo there, and then we'll save this payment here. So it's very straightforward. It's basically taking money out of an asset or liability and showing it being spent in, excuse me, so sorry, in an expense or liability there. Is really what that's doing. And these debits and credits you see are completely done for you. You don't have to worry about which side is which when doing a payment. It's just journal entries that can get kind of tricky on those. Again, if you need help, our support staff is very used to getting those questions. That definitely can be confusing, so please call them if you have any issues on debits or credits. All right, so go ahead and save this here. And let's see, look at our general ledger. Perfect, there's that check. The date it was written, the check number, which was automatically assigned because it was left blank. I believe I left it blank. And then the payee account, etc., all that good information there. All right, now let me go in and show you the final transaction type, and that is a transfer. So when in a transfer, you can go between any of the four to any of the four. So you can go from an asset, expense, income, or liability to an asset, expense, income, or liability, and that's with one caveat. So what that means is before you choose anything, this is kind of a blank slate, where you want to transfer money from. After you choose the first one, whether that's where the money's coming from or where the money's going, over here on the right side, then it will automatically filter down the choices you have left. Let me show you that really quick. It might make more sense. Let's choose, we want the money to come out of unrestricted, and it's an asset. That means all those options are gone except for assets. And you might ask why that is, and the reason really comes down to those pesky little debits and credits. Because when you're moving money, you have to make sure that both sides of the transaction balance. The only way that works out with debits and credits is that if it goes from asset to asset. For example, if I were to let me go to a liability. Oh, and let's go to income. It go from income to income. Or let me go to an expense really quickly here. Go from expense to expense. So it's basically saying that you can do everything until you tell me the first one you want to do, and then it will take care of figuring out, okay, you want to move money out of this account, what are the possibilities you can move it to, and it filters those down for you. So we'll say the expense is telephone, it's $10 there. And then it shows you all the different expense accounts you have here. And we'll say this is an office expense for $10. Great. So it put all the debits and credits in for you. And it took care of all the guesswork of knowing that you couldn't move it to an asset account or an expense, or an income or liability. It had to go from expense to an expense. All that guesswork for you. So go ahead and save that there. We'll jump back and see, make sure it looks correct here. General ledger. Ooh, let me refresh my page. Didn't come through. Must be a little bit of lag on that one there. Should have shown a transfer. I have it filtered, that's why. Let me unfilter that. There we go, perfect. So go ahead and show that right there at the top, that transfer. Now, if you want, you can always go ahead and click on this telephone here, see what you've got. And you can dig even deeper in here, this transfer. Ooh, yeah, there we go, perfect. And let's say for whatever reason you find out this isn't correct, then you followed that tree right down from your general ledger, and you can actually void it directly inside there if you want to. Confirm void, and it's gone from here. Let's pop back to our general ledger. You see it's still there, but it is marked in these red shades to show that it was voided. So as far as a paper trail is concerned, the integrity was maintained, but as far as accuracy is concerned, it was removed from your actual transactions there. All right, now there was a very specific question about reports. So I'm going to go over those here and show you the 4 different reports, how you can filter them, and how you can group them there. So since we're on the first report, which is general ledger, let's just start with that one. You may see these little drop-down arrows here. Those show you that this column can be filtered. And you may show these links here. These show you these 2 columns can be grouped. So let's group this by account. Click right on that. It breaks everything out into building fund, building repairs, central trust savings, Dave's money. It does it all that for you with one click of a button. And it undoes it all for you with one click of a button, just like that. So that's how you group your data together, is these little links up here. So you can link it and see this is everything that doesn't have a payee. And then these are things that do have payees down here at the bottom. There, so let's go back to the top, ungroup that. Now let's go ahead and filter this down. Let's go ahead and filter this down so it's only those that have payees. So we just, with 2 clicks of a button, the software has taken out all of those that have no payee in them, and now we can group them, and that's probably more what you're looking for at this report. So you have just the ones that have payees, and what the payees are is here at the top. Okay, so undo that. Let's go ahead and go back to all here. You can even do types. You could do, show me just the checks I've done, and let's show just the payee of Ameren Electric. It's a nice St. Louis electric place. So I'll show you all of those different checks. That's how with just a few clicks of your button, you can generate a report, a very simple report, but a report nonetheless that you can go ahead and show. If somebody asks you, hey, what are all the checks you've written to Ameren Electric this year? Boom, got them right there. And then you can just go ahead and print that off right here. It will take you right to your standard web browser print screen, and you can go ahead and print that off as well. Send it to whichever printer you need to. Go ahead and cancel that there. Or you can, of course, export to Excel if you wish to make your own, maybe fancier report that way and print that off. So that's the general ledger report. Please ask me a question if you have one regarding that report. Move on to the income and expense report here. This shows you, as you would imagine, just your income and expense accounts, and it shows you the level of detail. So you can go ahead and click on this. It wraps them all up, and you can do a very 30,000 foot view of your data there. Or you can start drilling in and say, okay, I want to see income, but I don't really want to see the funds or education ministry. I just kind of want to see this level of detail here. So you can really kind of, with just a few clicks, generate these reports for you there based on the data, based on what you need to report on. Not too much, not too little, hopefully. And then you have these powerful export or print options there as well. You could say, all right, well, that's a little bit too broad. Just show me the first quarter of this year. And it'll just show you the first quarter. You can say you want to adjust the second quarter. You could actually go in here and do a custom display as well. You could say 01 to back here to see back to May and show you that time range there as well. So with just a few clicks, you can really hone in on exactly what you need. And if you have any questions about these, if you do start using it, the software, then you can go ahead and really ask our support staff. They're very good at answering those questions there as far as filtering goes, which is a big part of Ledger and members specifically. So that's the income and expense report. We have our chart of accounts. There's another one, and again, same basic principles. You can collapse all of these down here, all these 4 groups, to get a very zoomed out 30,000 foot view. Or you can say, you know what, I want to show these other 4 in here, but I just want to see my liabilities broken out in detail. Or maybe just want to see your assets broken out in detail. And then of course, once you're ready, you can just print that, or maybe there's something else you still want to change. You can export that to Excel, make any changes, put your own stamp on that report, and then away you go. All right, and the last report we have here is our balance sheet. I will touch on the event log though. So you have our balance sheet here, and again, there's no filtering or grouping you can do by this, besides these arrows over here on the sides. So balance sheet just deals with assets and liabilities in much the same way that your income and expense report just dealt with those 2 categories there. So let me go ahead and touch on the, oh, that's the wrong one. Let me go ahead and touch on the event log very briefly, and then we'll open this up to questions here. And if you want me to review any one topic, especially those ones I did at the beginning when I was kind of moving around a little bit more, please go ahead and let me know, and I'll go ahead and briefly give you, another 1 or 2 minute explanation of that here. But the event log here is for auditing purposes, and it basically has tracked everything I've done so far in the program. It has a date stamp out to the seconds, and it shows you what action I was taking. I was updating a budget, creating a transaction. I was creating an account. It shows you exactly what the details of that were, what my email and what my user is based on email. You could actually say, okay, what just has James done here? Filter down just by James in there. Or let's say, what are just the budgets James has done? You can see those. And of course, this can be printed and exported, and it can be filtered by date as well, should the need arise. This button here automatically changes this to be the first of the year to the end of the year, whereas this modulates it by month range, which is pretty straightforward, I hope, on there. All right, so let me check our questions really quick to see if there are any pressing questions. Let me see here. I'm not seeing any other questions. So let me go ahead and think if there's anything I missed when I was going over here. Oh, there was one thing I missed. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that really quickly here. But while I'm going over that, please let me know if you do have any questions. I'll go ahead and get to those as soon as I can. All right. The one thing I missed was reconciliation of accounts. And for those of you who have a checkbook, it should be a fairly straightforward process there. Just make sure that every transaction was entered correctly, and basically taking what you have here in Ledger and what the bank has when you get your bank report, and then just going through those line by line and make sure that all works. All right, so let me go ahead and go back to the home page here very quickly, and I will show you how I usually do this. I usually jump over here and just click directly on assets. It shows me all of my asset accounts that I have here up at the top of this nice dashboard. And again, this can be printed or exported as well. It can be modulated So basically, any screen can really be a report if you want it to be. These four are kind of our reports that are most commonly used, so we break those out, but you could print this off as well if you wanted it to. So we're in assets. Let's say, okay, we're going to reconcile for Central Trust. So click on that bank account. Okay, we see the two different subdivisions here. We have our checkings and savings. You may notice this is following the very same structure we sent up on our chart of accounts, only it's breaking it out and showing it nice graphs here, nice numbers. Basically, it's creating a dashboard based off your chart of accounts, so it's pretty slick there. Then we'll say, okay, we want to reconcile our checking account, and it shows you that the subdivision underneath that is, or a sub-account underneath that is Central Trust Checking. That's the one we want to reconcile. And now we've drilled down this far, we can then see the nice green reconcile button up here. Before I click on that, one thing I want to make note of though is we have this little reconciled column with the closed padlock there. If you see that icon to the left, directly to the left of an item, that means it has been reconciled. So not a lot of these have been. Once something is reconciled, it cannot be changed. That's just good accounting. It's just a security feature. So please be very sure that you want to reconcile something before you complete the reconciliation there. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into reconciliation. You see this screen here has everyone's favorite color in accounting, green, and it shows the statement date here. So this is the date you get from your bank statement there. And then starting balance. Let's say starting balance was 1,000. And of course I typed 100, so let's change that to 1,000. And let's use this to 10,000. And of course, these are just arbitrary numbers I pulled off the top of my head. So it's going to be completely different for you. But then what you do is you go down and you say, okay, this one's on my bank statement. This one's on my bank statement. The amounts are correct. Everything looks good as far as the type, the payee account memo. I'm going to go ahead and check those off, meaning I want them to be locked and reconciled. And then you say, this one was not on my bank statement, but this one was on my bank statement. Okay, that's all good. You've checked those off. Now you have to get the off by amount to be 0 before it will allow you to save. It's not really grayed out, but it is kind of shadowed over there. So you would keep going until that amount is 0, and then you would save it, and it would apply all of your locks to the previous screen we just saw in there. And it's okay if you don't check everything on here, as long as you verify that everything is correct and the off by is 0, you can go ahead and save it there. That's completely fine. I have gone through with customers and looked at why they've had issues on reconciliation, and basically the only reason I've ever encountered is that either a transaction was missing or was incorrect. And I've done maybe 2 or 3 where I've gone through, taking the time to go through, okay, this is their statement, this is everything in Ledger and line by line. It is a tedious process, but if you've gone through that, you will go ahead and be able to reconcile there. All right, so that's everything I had for today. Let me go ahead and check questions here. And I'm not seeing any other questions. Just pop that out really quick. Okay, well, since I'm not seeing any other questions, thank you so much for joining our webinar today. And I'll go ahead and pass this back over to Stephen so he can go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, James. All right. So thank you again, James. I do want to point out, for those who haven't had a chance to, we do offer a 37-day free trial of Church360 Ledger. So we chose 37 days because this is financial software. We want to give you an entire month to put in your transactions and then a week to review them and just see how the software is going to be a great fit for you and your church. So if you head over to 360ledger.com, you'll see the option to start a free trial. I would caution those who have Church360 members to give us a call, and we will turn on your trial of Ledger for you. That way the subdomain names that you have created for your software will match, and you'll experience the syncing of the offering batches created in members syncing over to Ledger. All right, I want to bring up our contact information again. If you have any questions that may come up after you've viewed this webinar, you can reach me or you can contact our software consultant team. So this is both my personal and our departmental contact information, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. We did cover the questions and answers, so I definitely want to encourage, again, if we have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will definitely answer those questions for you. And we definitely encourage you to start a free trial of the software. So I would like to take the remaining seconds here to thank everyone for tuning in. Look out for those emails that will come your way with links to the recording of this training webinar, and feel free to share it there with everyone at church. And on behalf of James, I want to say thank you and have a wonderful and blessed day to everyone.